story.
The minimum wage stands at not even close, this woman says. Everything is so expensive these days, the minimum wage should be at least $40. This woman agrees. People have to work so hard, it should be at least $40. Taking factors such as the government's poverty line, this year's projected inflation rate and household spending into consideration, the Confederation of Trade Unions says workers should earn around $8,000 a month each to cover their basic living expenses. That works out to about $38 an hour.
For the grassroots workers, they depend on the minimum wage. The livelihood of workers is in regression, with the inflation, with the living standard putting pressure on the workers.
The union doesn't believe raising the minimum wage to $38 would drive up prices substantially. It also spoke out against the way the amount is determined.
It's unfair because, they depend on the data that are, for example, the wage increase for 2015, they depend on the data on 2013. So there's a 2 years of lagging behind, and with a lag behind of statistic data, they try to decide on the minimum wage. This is really unfair because the data is no longer, appropriate or no longer up to the real situations.
The group also proposed reviewing the minimum wage every year, instead every 2 years as it's being done now. The Federation of Trade Unions earlier proposed raising the amount to $39.70, as well as a yearly review. But businesses are against any sharp increase. Kevin Yao of the Institution of Dining Art says small and medium-sized enterprises could be feeling the pinch as a result. They would have to raise prices or be forced to close down. He said his group supports a minimum wage of $32 an hour. The minimum wage consultation period will end tomorrow, and the Minimum Wage Commission will submit its recommendation to the government by the end of this year. Rachel Ling, TVB News.
The LegCo Public Accounts Committee today continued to scrutinize the way the Mega Events Fund managed its finances. Lawmakers slammed the government for not revealing suggestions to scrap the fund. Vicky Kung reports.
It was the second public hearing into the government's handling of the Mega Events Fund, or MEF. The fund, set up in 2009, aims to help non-profit organizations host art, cultural and sport events in the city. According to the ICAC, its Corruption Prevention Advisory Committee had suggested the government to shut down and retrieve unused money from the fund back in 2010. But in 2012, the government sought and was granted $150 million in funding. And that was done without mentioning the corruption watchdog's suggestion to the LegCo.
Now, how much weight we would give to that suggestion, that's our prerogative. So it's not for the administration to decide for us that this is not important, irrelevant, and so on. So either you did so deliberately, or either there was gross negligence.
The ICAC recommendation also calls for scrapping the MEF. Why are you putting up a fight?
But the government played down the 2010 report, saying it only represented the views of certain members of the Corruption Prevention Advisory Committee. Legislators also complained about delays to the submission of the MEF's audit reports on its sponsorship of the Dragon and Lion Dance extravaganza, which critics say misused public money. The reports have now been submitted to the government, and the Public Accounts Committee wants officials to present them to lawmakers next week. Vicky Kung, TVB News.
There are raucous celebrations across India in the wake of the stunning landslide victory of the Hindu Nationalist Party in the national election. The decisive win means BJP leader Narendra Modi will become India's next Prime Minister. Alan Buknia reports.
Thousands of cheering supporters welcomed Modi on his arrival to New Delhi as he stood on the footboard of his SUV, flashing a victory sign. Modi now has a strong mandate to follow through on his campaign promise to revive economic growth at a time of profound changes in Indian society. As his victory became clear yesterday, Modi struck a conciliatory note, promising a regime that is all-inclusive. The results were a crushing defeat for the Congress Party, the Nehru-Gandhi political dynasty that has been at the center of Indian politics since the country gained independence in 1947. Outgoing Prime Minister Manmohan Singh bade his farewell after 10 years at the helm.
In the last 10 years, we as a country have seen many successes and achievements that we should be proud of. I am confident about the future of India.
But Modi remains a divisive figure in the country. As Chief Minister of Gujarat State, he was accused of doing little to stop communal rioting in 2002 that saw some 1,000 people killed, mostly Muslims. He denies any wrongdoing and was never charged with a crime. Modi also said he wants to strengthen ties with Washington, despite being denied a visa to the U.S. in 2005 because of his alleged complicity in the riots. The White House also expressed a desire for closer ties. U.S. President Barack Obama called Modi personally to congratulate him and invite him to Washington at a mutually agreeable time.
Once the government is formed, we look forward to working closely with the Prime Minister and the Cabinet to advance our strong bilateral relationship.
In India, the question now is, can the Hindu nationalist Modi be a truly secular leader in a country of many faiths? But analysts have said the BJP's image as a capitalist pro-business party resonated across the country. Alan Bookniat, TVB News.
Officials from both the mainland and Taiwan have discussed with Vietnam ways to deal with the aftermath of deadly anti-China riots that hit the Southeast Asian country this week. The issue was raised during a meeting of APEC trade ministers in Qingdao in Shandong province. Among the topics discussed, compensation for the businesses affected. Meantime, there are reports netizens in Vietnam are organizing a large-scale anti-China rally tomorrow. But the mayor of Hanoi said further unrest could have a negative impact on stability and social order. A number of deaths have been reported in the riots earlier this week, and the Hong Kong government has issued a red travel alert for Vietnam. The territorial dispute between Beijing and Hanoi took a turn for the worse after a recent move by the mainland to station an oil rig in the South China Sea. The camp of a Chinese company in northern Cameroon has come under attack. Xinhua news agency says one person was injured and 10 are missing. Other reports say rebels from the Islamist militant group Boko Haram were responsible for the attack.
A Laos Air Force plane carrying senior government officials has crashed, killing at least 5 people on board, including the country's defense minister. It's believed there were up to 20 people aboard the plane. Some passengers were reported to have survived. The plane was heading from the Laotian capital Vientiane to a ceremony in the northeastern province of Shangkuang. It crashed in a forested area near a major archaeological site, the Plain of Jars. Also confirmed killed were the governor of Vientiane and 2 other senior officials. The cause of the crash is not immediately known.
No end in sight to the political crisis in Thailand. First, the country's Senate announced it was ready to choose an interim prime minister, but then it stopped short of throwing out the current caretaker government over fears that would provoke a violent backlash from its supporters. Anti-government protesters are angry too. They say their demands of appointing a neutral prime minister were not met. They also say the caretaker administration, loyal to ousted leader Yingluck Shinawatra, wants to organize an election that it would likely win. The vote is tentatively scheduled for July 20th.
And still ahead in our newscast, developers deny getting boost from government. Turkish officials reject negligence claims over coal mine tragedy. And hockey great Teemu Selänne swan song.
Teachers on the loose.
W-I-P-E-O-U-T, wipe out.
Giving the toughest lesson. However, only one will receive a passing grade. Tonight, back to school wipeout at 8:30 on Pearl. Taxis racing.
Sorry about that.
Free runners and a bike in a building. A red car airborne.
I just went airborne there.
And a car that makes you look ugly in it. Monday, Top Gear Season 20 at 9:35 on Pearl.
依家係8號風球啊！兩兄弟一齊同大家追風同觀望先，小心啊！細佬！
A man drowned this afternoon trying to rescue his younger brother who was swept away by huge waves whipped up by the typhoon. The younger brother, aged 25, survived with serious injuries. A firefighter was also injured during the incident.
Typhoons are dangerous. Stay safe and stay indoors.
Clothes make the man, or so they say. And having someone else dress you isn't nearly as rewarding as doing it yourself. Tuesday, Too Cute at 8:35 on Pearl.
Welcome back. Stuart Lung of the Real Estate Developers Association says the government is not trying to curry favor with property firms in its recent proposal that benefits homeowners who are switching flats. He's also appealed to officials to further ease tough market cooling measures. Stephanie Choi reports.
The government has proposed allowing buyers more time to purchase a new home after selling their old flat to get a rebate on the double stamp duty. Stuart Lung, Executive Committee Chairman of the Real Estate Developers Association, told TVB News that speculators stand to benefit from the amendment, not developers. And he appealed to the government to review property cooling measures every 6 months or so.
I understand they might take at least a few more time to review whether the market will be worse than now. They said they will review from time to time.
Lung also wants to exempt commercial property buyers from the double stamp duty. He said this would benefit many business owners who prefer to buy their own commercial space to avoid rent increases. As for the average home buyer, Lung stressed requiring them to pay the double stamp duty poses a burden.
Why should you penalize them if people want to buy residential units and they pay the stamp duty already? Why you have charged them double? And for the buyer's stamp duty, well, again, why should they buy a ticket before they buy the unit?
He pointed out that government measures have had a cooling effect on the property market.
What we understand right now is already been a year or so already been passed. And the things we find out is the transaction is less and less.
And because of high construction costs, Lung doesn't believe home prices would drop in the next 3 years. He urged the government to build more public housing units as soon as possible in an attempt to ease public resentment, which he said is directed at property developers at the moment. He also suggested importing foreign labor to speed up housing construction as long as local workers won't be affected. Stephanie Choi, TVB News.
Secretary for Development Paul Chan said today it will be another 4 months before the government finds out exactly how